Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the program. This is the ZeroDarkTony channel. I am Tony D, your host, and we have got a lot of breaking news today. Pete Hegseth is looking down the barrel of articles of impeachment. Trump is still talking about the ceasefire. Will it ever see an end? Will the war ever end? Will this be a permanent ceasefire? We don't know. The Strait of Hormuz, it's getting crazy over there. And at the exact same time, those House Democrats dropping those articles of impeachment. Netanyahu is doubling down on the hardline military strategy. So we're live and unfiltered, so everybody hit that like button, subscribe, and share. We're going to break down what Trump's ceasefire talk means. We are also going to have a visit with J.D. Vance. The vice president made a few statements, and it was a bit of a sit down over at a TPUSA conference in Georgia. We are going to watch that as well. But right now, we are going to hear about how, as you can see right there, China agrees not to send weapons to Iran. I think that's pretty good. So let's get it going. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you share this out with a friend or as many places as you can. And we do appreciate you being here, but help me out and hit that like button. That will ensure that this video goes to more viewers like you. And I thank you so much for being here today. So let's get it.
Let's start here. So U.S. Central Command says that U.S. forces are maintaining their naval superiority in the Middle East. Commander Admiral Brad Cooper posting in part, in less than 36 hours since the blockade was implemented, U.S. forces have completely halted economic trade going in and out. And the numbers spell out the impact, with estimates that the blockade could cost the regime $435 million every day.
So meanwhile, President Trump laying out why Operation Epic Fury started in the first place, sitting down with Maria Bartiromo at the White House.
I had to divert, because if I didn't do that, right now you would have Iran with a nuclear weapon. And if they had a nuclear weapon, you would be calling everybody over there, sir. And you don't want to do that.
Well, you keep saying was. Is this war over?
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. But we'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
And Matt Finn is live in Dubai. And of course, the Gulf region has some thoughts as well, Matt.
Yeah, they certainly do, Dana, and it's the third day of the American blockade here on the Persian Gulf behind me. So far, no reports of any major incidents, but on the topic of the two-week ceasefire that we're in the midst of, a short while ago, a senior U.S. official telling Fox News that the United States has not formally agreed to an extension of the ceasefire. There is continued engagement between the U.S. and Iran to reach a deal. Now, a short while ago, also, the BBC reported that the Iranian military is threatening to block shipping in the Persian Gulf, the Red Sea, and the Gulf of Oman if the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports continues. The U.S. says it's not allowing any ships in or out of Iranian ports in the Strait of Hormuz, but it is allowing other ships to use the strait. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper writing in full, a blockade of Iranian ports has been fully implemented as U.S. forces maintain maritime superiority in the Middle East. An estimated 90% of Iran.
This is Admiral Brad Cooper. He is the commander of CENTCOM making this statement.
Iran's economy is fueled by international trade by sea. In less than 36 hours since the blockade was implemented, U.S. forces have completely halted economic trade going into and out of Iran by sea. Now, Kepler reports that yesterday 3 vessels passed through the Strait of Hormuz, and Fox confirms a 4th ship, a Chinese vessel carrying oil and chemicals, passed as well.
Thank you.
Now, President Trump posted the truth within the past hour. China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I am doing it for them also and the world. This situation will never happen again. They have agreed not to send weapons to Iran. President Xi will give me a big fat hug when I get there in a few weeks. We are working together smartly and very well. Doesn't that beat fighting? Now, here in the Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia is pressuring the United States to drop the naval blockade, fearing it could cause the situation with Iran to escalate. or further disrupt shipping routes. That's according to a Wall Street Journal report. Now, the UAE, the country that we're in, they have been very vocal about doubling down with their relationship with the United States, and said they would even stand by the United States if force is used out on the Persian Gulf.
So now we know that they are not going to be, hopefully not bringing any weapons through from China, smuggling them, anything like that. Let's go over to the White House. There are going to be some comments on the war, but also on some tax issues. So let's take a listen.
I will start with some scheduling announcements. Tomorrow afternoon, President Trump will travel to Las Vegas, Nevada to hold a roundtable and deliver remarks on the working families tax cuts. On Friday, President Trump will travel to Phoenix, Arizona to deliver remarks at a Turning Point USA event at Dream City Church. And I'm really honored to be standing here today on Tax Day with two esteemed members of the President's cabinet and his excellent economic team, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Small Business Administrator
I have
Kelly
many episodes on the Epstein files on this show, so you can go back and check the catalog. Also, I'm going to be doing several more, so make sure you hit that like button and hit those notifications.
As we have seen this tax season, President Trump's working families tax cuts have put a historic amount of money back into the pockets of the American people this year. On the campaign trail in 2024, President Trump looked voters in the eye and promised them he would sign the largest tax cuts in the history of our country. And on Independence Day last year, President Trump and congressional Republicans delivered, passing the largest tax cut in history for working and middle-class Americans, including no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security. They also passed unprecedented tax relief for small businesses, farmers, workers, and families. With Tax Day officially here, the numbers prove these tax cuts have been nothing short of extraordinary. More than 53 million filers claimed at least one of President Trump's signature new tax cuts. The average refund this filing season is more than $3,400.
Welcome, everybody.
The Trump administration has issued more refunds and larger refunds than in any year of the history of our country. And I will allow Secretary Bessent to break down the numbers in greater detail. President Trump and Republicans in Congress have always believed that the American people know how to spend their money better than the government does. But what the American people must not forget is that every single Democrat in Congress—
Shout out to everybody who's still at work and sneaking this in on their phone and their earpiece. I want to give you guys a big shout out. Thank you so much for being here.
Voted against these tax refunds. The media has largely omitted this fact and other critical details in their stories covering the benefits of the Trump tax cuts. If the Democrats in Congress had gotten their way and blocked President Trump's historic legislation, Americans would have faced the largest tax hike in history, nearly $4 trillion. The average taxpayer would have seen a 22% increase in their tax rates. Democrats in Congress have proven over and over again that they are the affordability frauds who believe the government should keep more of the American people's hard-earned money. This president and Republicans in Congress fundamentally believe that Americans deserve to keep more of their hard-earned paychecks. It's a clear contrast for American families to keep in mind. So with that, I will turn it over to our great Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, and then he will turn it over to Kelly. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Caroline. I'm here to tell you that it has been a fantastic tax season. It has gone smoothly. It has gone efficiently from the point of view of the IRS, but most importantly, it's been a great tax season for the American people. Thanks to promises made, promises kept, through the working families tax cuts, the president has delivered the record refunds to the American people. More than 45% of the filers of the returns that we have seen have had at least one of the 4 president's signature policies. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, the deductions for our great seniors, and the deductibility of interest on auto loans for American-made cars. And I will tell you that the biggest, one of those that Americans have taken is no tax on overtime. And it's the American way. If you want to work longer hours, you get to keep more of your money. And with that, we are seeing, I want to encourage everyone out there watching today to change their withholding if they haven't already done so. Because if you change your withholding, then you will get an automatic real wage increase, be it on a weekly or a monthly basis, and you will be able to keep more of your money this calendar year. So with that, we have also seen with the Trump accounts, we have had 5 million families file for Trump accounts for their children. 1.2 million of those are eligible for the $1,000 seed bonus. So we look forward to that picking up more and more. For those of you who haven't done it, it's easy to remember, Form 4547. You can do it while you're filing your taxes. You can do it at any point during the year. We think this is going to be transformational in terms of financial literacy. This is Financial Literacy Month, and at Treasury and all over the administration, we are working with the American people, with American families, not only to give them more of their money, but to show them how to invest it in a safe, smart, and sound way. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelly.
Great.
Okay, Kelly.
Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, everyone. Excited to be here on tax day, important
Extensions.
day for small business because small business and their employees have real relief thanks to President Trump's working family tax cuts. As administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, it is my great honor to serve our great president as the cabinet level voice for America's 36 million small businesses.
Does the American taxpayer pay for those extensions? I'm curious.
President Trump is right. Small business is big business. Indeed, they are a massive economic engine that creates 2/3 of all new jobs. They represent 99% of all businesses, and they drive about half of our GDP. The working family tax cuts are putting money back into the pockets of the hardest working Americans. That's why small business and their employees are benefiting the most. President Trump and congressional Republicans have saved Americans from a $4 trillion tax hike, including a staggering 20% tax increase on working families.
Hit the like
It would have
button.
destroyed millions
Thank you so
of
much
jobs.
for being here, guys.
Now, I've traveled the country from Maine to Alaska,
Maine to
and
Spain.
not a single worker, not a single small business asked to pay $1 more in taxes. Yet every single congressional Democrat voted to raise taxes, not just on small businesses, on our workers, on our seniors, on hardworking families. Thankfully, Republicans united behind common sense policy of letting Americans, not Washington bureaucrats or fraudsters, keep more of what they earn. Now, so far, as you've just heard, 12 million small businesses have an average tax saving of $7,000. The 20% small business pass-through deduction is now permanent, offering them certainty to plan for the future and the rocket fuel to create 1 million new jobs. Eric Williams at Prince Manufacturing in rural Georgia. He specializes in fabrication and machining. This year, he's reinvesting his tax savings to hire 500 new employees. The provisions for 100% expensing of equipment, expansion, and R&D are also growing production to help us reclaim industrial dominance. At Blue Patriot Fab, which I visited this week in Omaha, the owners highlighted one of their newest buildings, and they call it the Big Beautiful Building because the tax cuts helped them build it. Made in America is back, and that's why the America worker is winning too. No tax on tips and overtime means that millions of employees are now rewarded, not punished, for working more. And it's already benefited, as you just heard, 31 million taxpayers. In Baltimore,
Yay.
John and Tony Minidakis are proud second-generation owners of Jimmy's Seafood.
Yay.
Now, with no tax on tips and overtime, their 200 employees know that coming into work means going home with more pay. And Wade, a CNC machinist that I met at Lehigh Valley Plastics in Pennsylvania, said he routinely takes on extra shifts, and now the tax cuts reward his extra effort. And the benefits aren't just for tax season. As you've heard, the Trump accounts are connecting young people from birth to the power of our free enterprise system. With 529 savings accounts and
like and
workforce
subscribe,
power for
guys.
trade
Like and
schools,
subscribe.
we're now training the next generation.
This channel is actually 9 subscribers away from 34,000. So I'd appreciate you guys helping me out with that and hitting the like button.
Skilled workers to fill millions of open jobs at small businesses. So in closing, America is open for business again. Yet every
That's a good one.
Democrat voted no on the
Welcome,
very
everybody.
tax relief that is restoring Main Street, that is putting more money back into the pockets of hardworking families. Small businesses are rebounding from years of Biden inflation, decades of unfair trade, and massive regulatory overreach. But thanks to President Trump's tax cuts, they now talk about expansion, hiring plans,
nervous.
and generational opportunity. This is America First in action. Lower taxes, rising wages, and a thriving Main Street. Now millions of Americans are getting their largest tax refund ever, and Main Street is getting historic tax relief to keep the American dream alive. Thank you.
All right.
Good. And before we take questions, I want to provide some numbers for you all. So tax day statistics as of April 12th, over 53 million filers, nearly 45% claimed one of President Trump's signature tax cuts.
Get it out.
The average tax cut per
He
filer
is nervous.
benefiting from one of President's new tax cuts is over $800. Over 6 million filers have claimed no tax on tips with an average deduction of $7,100. Over 25 million filers have claimed no tax on overtime with an average deduction of $3,100. Over 30 million seniors have claimed the enhanced deduction for seniors with an average deduction of $7,500. And over 1 million filers have claimed no tax on car loan interest on American cars for an average deduction of over $1,800. The average refund this filing season is over $3,400. Over 34 million families have claimed Republicans' enhanced child tax credit, which is permanently doubled and expanded by the working families tax cuts. Over 105 million filers have claimed the permanently doubled standard deduction, simplifying tax filing for millions across America. So as much as people do not like to pay their taxes, and we saw a survey today that 70% of Americans still believe that they are overtaxed, this is a great day for the American people.
Thank you, Scott and Kelly. We'll now open it up to questions. You're welcome to ask me questions or either of the great cabinet officials next to me. And we'll start, as always, with our new media seat, Mr. Posobiec. Why don't you kick us off?
Jack?
Caroline, Secretary Vance, if I may, there's been this media narrative out there that while we see the data on tax refunds, that it's not good enough, that the tax season has been too soft. What is your response to this media narrative regarding the tax refunds?
Look, it's been an incredible tax season. We have done more with less at the IRS, that we have moved over millions of taxpayers to digital tax accounts, and that leaves us able to service more taxpayers in person and on the phone. And as we can see, the economy was very strong. We are seeing growth across the board in all areas, and as Kelly said, small business, Main Street are really the big beneficiaries, and this is what they don't want you to hear. That Wall Street always done great. This administration is focused on parallel prosperity and bringing prosperity back to Main Street, and that starts with people keeping more of their money.
I actually pride myself on having people in here who are from different parts of the political spectrum. So let's do this. Put a 1 in the chat if you support Trump. Put a 2 in the chat if you don't support Trump. And let's get the conversation really kicked off. Come on.
And one for Caroline, as well as the administration in general, if I may. This past Saturday, I published a video of
Everyone's welcome.
Now former Representative Eric Swalwell in bed. The president's heading to Las Vegas. Well, Eric Swalwell was in Las Vegas in this video. I'm told, according to geotagging, this scandal has erupted now. Accusers coming forward, many others coming forward, as well as questions regarding his extremely close relationship with Arizona Senator Ruben Gallego. And I want to know if the administration had any comment on the fact that Senator Gallego seemed to be very vocal about wanting the release of the Epstein files, and yet when questions come to his own involvement with Eric Swalwell, he doesn't seem to want to provide anything.
Yeah, look, I think the accusations and allegations against former Representative Swalwell are despicable and disgusting. I think it's also quite plausible, as you point out, Jack, that there were many other Democrats in this town on Capitol Hill who knew about his perhaps illegal behavior, certainly his disgusting and inappropriate behavior, and why were they silent for so long? I think those are questions that must be raised of these sitting representatives, including Mr. Gallego, and I hope that the journalists in this room will do their jobs, and the journalists on Capitol Hill will do their jobs to ask Democrats in power how they knew about such despicable behavior from one of their elected representatives for so long, but never said or did anything about it. So that's what we hope to see as far as the White House and the president is concerned.
We can
Thank
see
you.
the press pool there.
Peter.
Thank you. I have one for you and then one for Secretary Besson.
Sure.
For you, Caroline, there are now 10 American scientists who have either gone missing or died since mid-2024. They all reportedly had access to classified nuclear or aerospace material. Is anybody investigating this to see if these things are connected?
I've seen the report, Peter. I haven't spoken to our relevant agencies about it. I will certainly do that and we'll get you an answer. If true, of course, that's definitely something I think this government and administration would deem worth looking into. So let me do that for you.
Thank you. And Secretary Besson, it doesn't sound like we're going to have $3 a gallon gas by summertime, which we had initially been told by the Energy Secretary. He now says that it would be very aggressive if we're going to get to the $3 a gallon gas by the summer. So when are we really going to get $3 a gallon gas?
Well, I think that's going to be the up to how the negotiations go. President Trump said this morning that he thinks we're nearing the end. The U.S. kept their side on the ceasefire. We've stopped firing. The Straits of Hormuz have not been completely reopened, so we will see. And I'm optimistic that during the summer we will see gas with a 3 in front of it sooner rather than later. It's Bank Week here in D.C., so I've been meeting with a lot of my Middle Eastern counterparts, the finance ministers, and they all say that once the straits are open, they can start pumping again within 1 week.
So not by summer, like Memorial Day, but maybe by Labor Day?
Again, I'm optimistic that sometime between June 20th and September 20th that we can have $3 gas again. And as I said this morning too, we are going to be watching the gas stations because they raise prices very quickly when when the crude oil prices went up. We hope they'll bring them down just as quickly as crude oil prices have come down, which they've come down substantially just in the past 10 days.
Yeah, he's really not together as far as the public speaking goes. He needs a little more media training, I think.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Caroline. Can you give us an update on the president's thinking on the next attorney general? A lot of names have been going around, like Ron DeSantis, Rudy Giuliani, Ed Martin. They're being floated as contenders. What qualities is the president looking for in a new AG? And will there be accountability for what many have described as weaponization within Biden's office when he was the president?
Sure. Well, certainly ensuring that there's accountability for the weaponization of justice that took place under the Biden administration is a top priority for this president. With respect to names that are floated, there are always names floated in the press. Sometimes I have a chuckle when I read some of the reports about certain people floated for certain jobs. As far as the president is concerned right now, Todd Blanche remains the acting attorney general. The president feels he's doing a good job, and that's where it remains right now. I don't have any personnel updates for you today. Annie.
Thank you, Caroline. I have a question for you and also for the Treasury Secretary. First of all, there was an interview that Dr. Mehmet Oz did recently where he described the president's views on his own diet. He said that he argued that diet soda is good for him because it kills grass. And if you pour it onto the grass, the grass is killed and it therefore must kill cancer cells. I'm wondering if you can, was this sort of an accurate description of how the president sees?
Look, as we all know in this room, I think you know the president has a very good sense of humor. It's one of his most underreported characteristics, I would say. I have heard him tell this joke before. I think the Wall Street Journal should get a better sense of humor.
And then another one for you. Has the president filed his taxes and is he going to release them publicly?
It's actually a very good question. I have not inquired with the president directly about his own taxes, but I'm happy to do so, and we'll get you an answer on that.
Secretary Besson,
I have filed my taxes.
The president has publicly said that you are the reason that he has not fired Chairman Jay Powell. Will you make that case again to him, as he's recently said that he still wants to fire the chairman?
Look, I am they're confident that the process that we laid out in terms of Kevin Warsh becoming the next Fed chair. He's going to have the hearing on the 21st of this month. He's a great candidate. We know that the Republicans on the Senate Senate Banking Committee are aligned in that, and I am very optimistic that Kevin Warsh will be the chair of the Fed on time, and that will be a moot question.
Stephen, go ahead.
Secretary Vance, you mentioned that the no tax on overtime is the biggest one that people are claiming. I think you said 25 million people. Have you seen evidence that more companies are offering overtime or that people are working more overtime and increasing their productivity? And the second question, the health insurance industry is advertising heavily in D.C., describing themselves as the good guys in the whole healthcare system. President Trump has threatened to haul in their executives and force them to lower prices. Can you provide any update on the administration's efforts there?
Okay, so I'll take the second one last because that's not my area. I don't wear a lot of hats here, but I am sure that the president makes his views known with corporate executives, and if that is true, then they will be hauled before him. And with overtime, as Kelly and I go out and talk to employers and workers around the country, they all want more overtime. And there was this narrative that I think over 2 million illegal aliens have either voluntarily deported or been deported, and that there would be a worker shortage. Well, what better way to fill that gap than with overtime for hardworking Americans and for them to keep more of it? I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I'll just add that a great example are the factories that we see coming back thanks to 100% Made in America expensing. TPUSA Steel is a great example in Rome, Georgia, where the owner was down to running one shift 1 day a week. He's up to 2 or 3 shifts 5 or 6 days a week. So thanks to reindustrializing this nation through our small manufacturing base, which most manufacturers in America meet the small business definition, 98% of them, we're seeing more shifts taking place, more opportunities for overtime, and then more willingness of workers to take on overtime shifts, because in the past they were penalized by the tax system for taking on overtime.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
Thank you. This is for Administrator Loeffler. You talked about how the One Big Beautiful Bill benefits small businesses. With small business optimism falling in March, is the administration planning on providing any additional tax relief or other resources to small businesses that have been affected by high fuel prices during their run operation?
Yeah, so one data point does not a trend make, and the long-term trend under President Trump has been for small business optimism to be above its 52-year average. Under Joe Biden, small business optimism fell below that average for 34 consecutive months because small business was being crushed by regulation, massive red tape, the threat of high taxes, and all the burdens of the Green New Deal. So right now, small businesses are really in growth mode. They're planning to hire, and the optimism is very strong. If you see in the NAM survey, National Association of Manufacturers came out, their optimism is up 5 points. So I think this is temporary, and we'll get back on trend.
What's the status of extending the Iran ceasefire, Caroline?
Yes, so I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We remain very much engaged
guys.
in these negotiations, in these talks. You heard from the Vice President directly and the President this week that these conversations are productive and ongoing, and that's where we are right now. I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House. But we feel good about the prospects of a deal. The President mentioned that in his interview yesterday, and it's obviously in the best interest of Iran to meet the President's demands. I think he's made his red lines in these negotiations very clear to the other side, and so we are continuing to see how these conversations go.
Would those talks be in Islamabad, or where would they be the next round?
They would very likely be in the same place as they were last time, yes. With the same, I would just want to make one point that's important to the President. The Pakistanis have been incredible mediators throughout this process, and we really appreciate their friendship and their efforts to bring this deal to a close. So they are the only mediator in this negotiation. While there have been many countries around the world who want to offer their help, the President feels it's important to continue to streamline this communication through the Pakistanis, and so that's what continues to take place.
We just hit 34,000 subscribers, guys. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for being here. Hit that like button.
Will.
Thank you, Caroline. How much room do you see for additional sanctions being placed on Iran? And do you feel like the United States is getting enough support from allies on that front? There was a letter that went to Oman and some other allies that suggested maybe the sanctions weren't, this could be for Secretary Vance as well, but the sanctions basically weren't having the effect that the United States wanted.
I'll let the Treasury Secretary who's in charge of sanctions answer that question.
Yeah, I think that's not a correct characterization.
Thank you, Patricia, member for 8 months, jumping back on the soldier train here at the ZDT channel. We do appreciate your support and your membership. Thank you.
Yesterday, we announced Operation Economic Fury, and we, for over a year, we have had maximum pressure on the Iranians, both on blocking payments into the Iranian state and going after the accounts of the IRGC. One of what may prove to be fatal mistakes that the Iranians made was bombing their GCC neighbors, and who are now willing to be much more transparent in terms of the funds or do a deeper dive in investigating the funds that are held within their banking systems. So we have pushed out to them the request that we want to freeze more funds of the leadership.
Thank you, Patricia, for the gifted membership.
Of the IRGC and any members of Iranian leadership. The other thing that we have done is we have told countries that if you are buying Iranian oil, that if Iranian money is sitting in your banks, we are now willing to apply secondary sanctions, which is a very stern measure. And the Iranians should know that this is going to be the financial equivalent of what we saw in the kinetic activities.
Is this an example of expanding the war economically as opposed to militarily? Is this another phase in
Exactly.
Secretary, what was the coordination? Any update on the insurance program, the U.S. reinsurance program for ships and tankers sailing through the Strait of Hormuz? Any update on that, sir?
Well, it's now up to $40 billion. It's run through the DFC, and we are waiting for the ships to be able to get some semblance of normality, and then they can come to the DFC and our private sector partners and request the insurance.
And what do you tell private shipping companies out there right now nervous about this whole thing, saying, wondering if they should even get near the strait?
What's that?
What do you tell to encourage shipping companies to do business through the strait?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait and see when they are permanently open, because this is a mechanism. When we declare that it is safe, they also have to have insurance. Lloyd's of London had skyrocketing insurance during the time. The rates are still very high. So we want to provide, the U.S. government will make a profit on this, but we want to provide a more normalized level and an economically sound basis for ships to move in and out of the Gulf as they did before the start of the conflict.
Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. So I want to cover two topics, if I could, the tax day, but also the confirmation. So the confirmation hearing set for next week for Kevin Warsh, but Senator Tom Tillis is still a no, and he's holding firm on that. How are you going to win over Senator Tillis to get this confirmation out of committee?
Look, I'm sure Senator Tillis wants to do the best thing for the Federal Reserve, for the American people. He has publicly said that Kevin Warsh is a great candidate for the chair, so let's get to the hearings and see where we are then.
I want to ask you about tax day, if I could. So the tax gains that you talked about through the One Big Beautiful Bill, is that going to offset the consternation from Americans, for lack of a better term, over the $4 gallon of gas?
Well, again, as I said, no one's ever objected to more money in their pocket. So the Americans have more money. They can decide how they want to spend it. And I did want to come back to the overtime question, because I was up in Westchester County last Friday, and I met with several of the first responders and police unions. And those, whether it's our great policemen, our firemen, our ambulance drivers, they all now want more overtime. And how great it is to have them to be able to be engaged and keep more of their money.
Thank you, Caroline. For both of you, perhaps, are President Trump's threats of a 50% tariff against China still on the table now, or is the letter exchange that we talked about now taking that off of the table?
Well, as you know, the president spoke about the letter with respect to he and the correspondence between he and President Xi. President Xi assured the president that they are not supplying Iran with weapons throughout this conflict, and that assurance was made to the president. It's obviously something the administration keeps close tabs on with respect to tariff. You have any update on that, Mr. Secretary?
I don't have an update on the tariffs, but I do have an update on sanctions. Iran is used to be the largest state sponsor of terrorism. China was purchasing more than 90% of their oil, which is about.
You know what? We're going to jump over to another section of coverage because they don't split the screen over at the White House. So we're going to jump into this the same spot.
Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. Thanks, Caroline. Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. So I want to cover two topics, if I could, the tax day, but also the confirmation. So the confirmation hearing set for next week for Kevin Warsh, but Senator Tom Tillis is still a no, and he's holding firm on that. How are you going to win over Senator Tillis to get this confirmation out of committee?
Well, I'm sure Senator Tillis wants to do the best thing for the Federal Reserve, for the American people. He has publicly said that Kevin Warsh is a great candidate for the chair. So let's get to the hearings and see where we are then.
I want to ask you about tax day, if I could. So the tax gains that you've talked about through the One Big Beautiful Bill, is that going to offset the consternation from Americans, for lack of a better term, over the $4 a gallon of gas?
Well, again, as I said, no one's ever objected to more money in their pocket. So the Americans have more money. They can decide how they want to spend it. And I did want to come back to the overtime question because I was up in Westchester County last Friday, and I met with several of the first responders and police unions. And those, whether it's our great policemen, our firemen, our ambulance drivers, they all now want more overtime. And you know how great it is to have them to be able to be engaged and keep more of their money.
Secretary, thank you, Caroline. For both of you, perhaps, are President Trump's threats of a 50% tariff against China still on the table now, or is the letter exchange that you talked about now taking that off of the table?
Well, as you know, the president spoke about the letter with respect to he and the correspondence between he and President Xi. President Xi assured the president that they are not supplying Iran with weapons throughout this conflict, and that assurance was made to the president. It's obviously something the administration keeps close tabs on with respect to tariff. You have any update on that, Mr. Secretary?
I don't have an
help me out and hit that like button, guys. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Update on the tariffs, but I do have an update on sanctions. Iran is used to be the largest state sponsor of terrorism. China was purchasing more than 90% of their oil, which is about 8% of China's energy needs. We believe this blockade in the Straits, there will be a pause of Chinese buying, but I will tell you that two Chinese banks received letters from the U.S. Treasury. I'm not going to identify the banks, but we told them that if we can prove that there is Iranian money flowing through your accounts, then we are willing to put on secondary sanctions.
And are you,
Nick, go ahead. Thank you, Caroline. Go ahead, Nick.
Just a quick follow-up. So my question for are you considering any more sanctions relief, Mr. Secretary, for countries that are suffering right now in order to give more oil to your allies?
We will not be renewing the general license on Russian oil, and we will not be renewing the general license on Iranian oil. Because again, that was oil that was on the water prior to March 11th. Right. So all that has been used.
Thank you,
Nick, go ahead.
Treasury Secretary, as you both noted, 53 million Americans have used one of these new tax exemptions the president enacted. Can you speak to not only the relief that's bringing specifically working class Americans like waiters, bartenders, overtime workers, but also the impact this is going to have on the economy?
Well, a couple of things there is I can tell you, I think Kelly's very popular, but I think with service workers, I may be the most popular cabinet secretary in D.C. because when I show up, a doorman, the not so much bartenders, but waiters, waitresses, they all say, thank you for no tax and tips. Again, I was in a diner up in Westchester County, and this is a home run in terms of what's happening with these folks. And what we can't tell you yet, and we will be able to provide data at a later date, that 52 million is how many have used at least one of those. So we expect that there are probably multiple filers who have used at least more than one of those 4 signature things. And look, again, this is the America First, Americans, hardworking Americans keeping more of their money, just like with our small businesses. If we go back and look, when you hear the left talk about this was a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires, they wanted to raise the tax rate for everyone making more than $500,000. That is a small business killer.
I have one question for the Secretary and then the Administrator. Mr. Secretary, since we're on the topic of China a few minutes ago, we are a little over a year past Liberation Day, the tariffs. The goods trade deficit with China has dropped sharply. Are those gains sustainable, and are you worried about any retaliatory actions that could go against those gains?
I actually think we're going to be building on those gains in terms of the trade deficit dropping with China. Since last summer, there's been great stability in the relationship, and really the keystone to the relationship is the strong respect that the two leaders have between each other.
Thank you for the gifts.
My experience has been when the communication is at the top, then we follow that directive and those wishes. We had the meeting in Busan, Korea. In October, we will be having the state visit in Beijing, and so I expect great stability in the relationship, but that doesn't mean that our trade deficit can't continue dropping.
Go ahead. For the Administrator, I know that there are orders and shipments of factory equipment. They are at record highs. How many small businesses has the SBA assisted with loans and supports, with loans to support them?
Well, the SBA set an all-time lending record last year of $45 billion under President Trump, because small businesses now have access to the capital that they need to build in America. Again, we are becoming a nation of builders, and we see that on the ground. Factories expanding. As a result, we have record PMI, which is Purchasing Managers Index, manufacturing expansion, 2 consecutive months in a row of export records. And so when you look at where our nation has come in terms of export-import imbalance, it's been unfair to the American worker and to American industry, and we're reshoring whole industries because of this tax bill.
Libby.
Libby, go ahead. Thank you, Caroline. I have 2 questions for you. The first one is about Iran. The second one's actually about United Airlines that I want to ask you about. So on Iran, is there a timeline for how long this blockade is going to remain in place in the Strait of Hormuz by the United States that President Trump has voiced to you or that you've heard among officials?
Sure. I will never set timelines on behalf of the President of the United States, but with respect to the blockade, as you know, it has been fully implemented, and it's being enforced against vessels of all nations entering or departing Iranian ports. I want to make that point clear. I've seen some misreporting on.
Okay, we mix it up in here so everybody can get their word in. We don't care what side you're on. This is not an echo chamber. So there you go.
That as well. This includes all Iranian ports on the Arabian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. How
about this? Put a 1 in the chat if you support Trump. Put a 2 in the chat if you do not. Let us show the world how we have people from both sides of the political aisle here, and we welcome them.
U.S. forces in the region are supporting the freedom of navigation.
How you start conversations.
For vessels that are transiting the strait to and from non-Iranian ports. So I know some in the press were confused about that. We are supporting the freedom of navigation, just not with respect to any tanker or vessel that would benefit the economy of Iran as these negotiations continue.
So there was reports that the CEO of United proposed a merger with American Airlines. This would affect tens of millions of Americans. That was proposed in a meeting with President Trump. Was that a merger that he has voiced any kind of support of?
It's not anything that we have a position.
Everybody's here, okay?
Position on or anything we're commenting on. I know it's an idea that has been proposed by private industry, but it's not something the president or the White House have an opinion on or are weighing in on at this time. John, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. This is for Secretary Hegseth. On Monday of next week,
importers can start requesting claims for tariff refunds. And my understanding is $127 billion eligible for refunds. What's that process look like? How can a porter and an importer request such a refund going forward?
That's not being run out of Treasury. We will just be the paymaster. So that's being run out of CPB. Yep.
And so explain that process. I understand you're not running it. How does that process actually work? If you're an importer, you paid these tariffs, the Supreme Court found that those tariffs were illegal. What's the process for them to get back that money?
Well, they would be in touch with the CPB, and I think the number you're quoting is so that's the amount who have already requested refunds. So they are already in the chute, and we'll see what the timeline is for that.
Will that affect the U.S. economy, all of those refunds coming out of the U.S. Treasury?
We'll have to see what comes out, and we'll have to see what the companies do with them. Just to be clear, thanks to the Supreme Court, some of this money is going back to China. So is that going to affect the U.S. economy? I don't know.
A question for Secretary Bessent.
Danny, go ahead.
Mr. Secretary, you were quoted as saying in an interview earlier this week that it was worth a bit of economic pain for international security. Is that this administration's message to American voters with high gas prices that ahead of the midterms this year that it's worth the economic pain?
Well, the message is the short-term volatility for long-term gain.
That's right. And Danny, if I could add to that, the president's been very clear, again, as the secretary just said, this is a short-term disruption for the long-term strategic goal of the United States to ensure that the world's leading state sponsor of terror cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. That's a good thing for the American people. That's a good thing for people all over the world. And as the president and his economic and energy team have repeatedly stated, as soon as the operation and now the negotiations with Iran conclude and the strait is reopened, we do expect gas prices to decrease. And thank goodness we have a president and an administration that believes in American energy dominance in bringing down prices at the pump. Look at how gas prices decreased over the past year since this president was in office. It's a stark contrast to the previous administration and Democrats in this city who believe in hampering our domestic energy industry, who believe in importing our most precious resources, who believe in implementing policies that created the worst inflation crisis in history. So President Trump has built the greatest economy in the world before. He is doing it again. Of course, we have this short-term disruption, but again, it's for the long-term strategic goal of ensuring that these terrorists cannot possess a nuclear bomb. Jennifer.
First, Secretary Bessent, on the Russian oil, I know the sanctions waivers have expired, but how much money did Russia benefit from that temporary sanctions rules? You initially said about $2 billion. Is that?
It could have been $2 billion. We don't know. But it's let's think of a different world where oil spiked to 150, and they would have made a lot more by doing that, by pushing the Russian barrels that were already on the water. They were going to be sold. They were going to China no matter what. We pushed them to our allies. We helped stabilize the oil price.
Hit the like button, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Scenarios. Oil's going to
hit that like button for me.
150. It's going to 200. It's going to $250. West Texas crude, for the front month delivery, is about $92 or $93 now.
Thank you, everybody. I know we have two very busy cabinet secretaries with us here today. Before we do depart, just one final announcement. As you know, this year we celebrate America's 250th birthday. In honor of this historic occasion, President Trump and the Department of Interior will submit plans for the United States Triumphal Arch, which will be an architectural masterpiece to celebrate our history right here in Washington, D.C. This is a rendering of the Arch for you. Thank you, Peter. It's quite beautiful, as you can see, and this monumental arch will beam at 250 feet tall in honor of 250 years and stand on ground that is currently empty green space in Memorial Circle on Columbia Island, a man-made island in the Potomac River managed by the National Park Service. The United States Triumphal Arch will be outfitted with beautiful artwork and depictions celebrating the success of the American people over our 250-year history and the enduring triumph of the American spirit. Long after everyone in this room is gone, our children and grandchildren will remain inspired by this national monument. Beginning construction this year on the architectural arc is a fitting way to commemorate the 250th anniversary of American independence. Great nations build beautiful structures that cultivate national pride and love of country, and this triumphal arc should be a project that all Americans of all political persuasions can support, because it's a monument for every American to celebrate 250 years of our nation's proud history. And again, the plans for this will be submitted tomorrow. And we'll have many more announcements with respect to our 250th anniversary in the coming months as we look forward to the 4th of July. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
So there is the briefing from the White House this morning. We are going to jump over to Israel State Television, and we are going to listen to Bibi give us a little talk about the war.
Dear citizens of Israel, my brothers and sisters, the campaign is not yet over, but we can already state clearly: we have achieved historical results. I want to recall where we were. Iran tried to wrap us in a chokehold. Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Assad regime in Syria, the militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, Iran itself. In other words, they wanted to choke us, and we are choking them. They threatened us with annihilation, and now they are fighting to survive. We have struck them, we have more to do, and I will detail that shortly. But I want to start precisely with Iran itself, the head of the octopus, because I have dedicated a significant part of my life to prevent one thing: that this terror regime obtains nuclear weapons with which it seeks to destroy the Jewish state and put an end to Jewish history. I spoke about this in Congress, at the UN, and in various parliaments. I directed all kinds of operations, mostly covert, to delay them, and indeed we delayed them. But the world did not listen. Many said it is not that bad. It is not even that bad for Iran to have nuclear weapons. These voices I heard not only outside, I heard them even among us, and as Prime Minister of Israel, head of the one and only Jewish state, I could not accept that, and the great change took place that evening of Kalbi, my heart's people, when I informed you that our brave pilots were in the skies of Iran. In the skies of Iran, striking targets all across Iran. We were the first to break the barrier of fear, the fear of acting in Iran itself. And I remember my feeling. Such excitement, such pride, shivers. And I know that you all experienced it too. We were the first to act because we knew what was at stake. But if I had told you a year ago that our pilots would fly over Iran, who would have believed it? And if I had told you a year ago that the United States of America, the strongest power in the world, would fight alongside us, shoulder to shoulder, wing to wing, for nearly 40 days against a common enemy, who would have believed it? But all of this happened because we initiated, we acted, we attacked. And why did we go out to battle? Because Iran was very close to obtaining nuclear weapons and to achieving the ability to produce missiles, thousands upon thousands of missiles, not a handful of missiles a day, but hundreds falling on us every single day. Two existential threats that we had to remove from over our heads. If we hadn't gone out for Kalbi, and then Lion's Roar, Iran would already have atomic bombs. We prevented that, and I will tell you how we prevented it. Because before Kalbi, accurate intelligence reached me in time, and it told us that Iran was starting to work on turning enriched uranium into nuclear weapons. And the moment we received that intelligence, we went into action. We eliminated 12 of their senior nuclear scientists. We attacked their nuclear facilities together with our American friends. If you remember the attack on Fordow, look at what excellent work they did. And we also attacked missile stockpiles and hundreds of launchers. And all of this removed a double existential threat from us immediately. But after a few months, precise intelligence reached me again, and again on time, and this intelligence showed that Khamenei ordered the renewal and even the expansion of both the nuclear industry and the missile industry. I use the word industry because he intended something much more extensive underground. He wanted to hide both the missile production and the nuclear production deep, deep under a high mountain, in such a way that even B-2 bombers could not reach it. And again, I could not sit on the sidelines. We took action. In a precise operation, we eliminated 8 more nuclear scientists who were engaged this time in weaponization. That is, the production of weapons, not just enriched uranium, but the weaponry. Without this, it is impossible to produce atomic bombs. We destroyed the heavy water plant in Iraq. We destroyed their entire centrifuge array and also uranium production facilities. That is, we effectively reached a situation where Iran has no active enrichment plant and most of their ability to produce missiles has disappeared. They have missiles, they have a stockpile of missiles, and it is running out. In other words, we succeeded here in crushing the nuclear program, crushing the missile program, and we also had an additional goal to crush the regime in Iran, to weaken it to its lowest, weakest level since the regime was established 47 years ago. And I want to tell you what we did. We eliminated the supreme leader Khamenei, his acting replacement Larijani, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Intelligence, the Chief of Staff of the Iranian Army, the Commander of the Quds Force Operations Unit, the Commanders of the Revolutionary Guards, the Commanders of the Besiege, the top security leadership, the intelligence leadership, the senior Air Force commanders, the official in charge of drones, the official in charge of transferring funds to terrorist organizations, the commander of the Iranian Navy, the Iranian fleet in the Caspian Sea, dozens of Revolutionary Guard and internal security headquarters, dozens of helicopters and transport planes, and the Revolutionary Guard's money machine. This is the steel industry in Iran and 3/4 of Iran's petrochemical plants. This is what the Revolutionary Guards live on. We struck the largest gas production plant in Iran, fuel depots, communication hubs, and railways used to transport forces and weapons, as well as dozens of weapon manufacturing factories. And there are many, many more details. I am sparing you, but we did not spare them. We have made a massive change here. There are people who say we have no achievements. These are massive achievements, and this is expressed in this weakened regime that is begging, pleading for a ceasefire. It is expressed in internal conflicts within the leadership. We know about it. We see their growing difficulty in meeting the needs of the citizens. It is expressed in a deep weakening of the regime of terror. Iran is no longer the same Iran, and Israel is also not the same Israel.
Love bagels.
Those who sought to destroy us are now fighting for their own survival, and as for the octopus's arms. Here too, we have done massive things. First of all, we established a rule. Israel will not tolerate a situation where terrorist organizations sit on its border, and therefore, we created security zones deep within enemy territory. In Gaza, we control over half, more than 50%, of the Strip's territory. We are gripping Hamas from every side, and we will take care of it. In Syria, we are at the peak of Mount Hermon and we reach as far as the Yarmouk, where we also look out for our Druze allies, our brothers. In Lebanon, there is a change. My friends, do you remember Nasrallah? He bragged, the killer of the Jews, that's what he called us. Well, he was eliminated. And what we eliminated along with him was his massive missile arsenal, a stockpile of 150,000 missiles and rockets that we destroyed in 6 hours, the vast majority of them. They still have some rockets left, and we are dealing with that. But they planned something else. They planned for thousands of Radwan force terrorists to arrive, to reach the border secretly, to invade and conquer the Galilee. We eliminated that. We conquered. First of all, we killed many of them. We crushed all the underground infrastructure they prepared, the tunnels, the terror villages above ground, and we created a security zone of 8 to 10 kilometers to distance the threat from our communities. We are still fighting them. It's not over yet. You saw just a few days ago, we carried out the most powerful operation since the pagers. We eliminated hundreds of terrorists at once in 10 minutes, and our hand is still stretched out. It continues all the time. We are fighting Hezbollah because we are determined. I am determined to restore security to the residents of the north. They deserve it like every other citizen of Israel. I want to tell you what happened here. As a result of this power we demonstrated, Lebanon has approached us in the last month, approached us several times, to start direct peace talks. This has not happened to us in history yet. Actually, it happened once decades ago, but now they have approached us and I made it conditional on two things. We want to achieve the disarmament of Hezbollah, and we want a real peace agreement. A peace agreement that will last for generations. And I want to tell you one more thing. Not only is Lebanon approaching us, many other countries, both in the Middle East and outside it, are seeking cooperation and alliances because they see our strength. Strength brings people closer, just as weakness drives them away. Strength brings people closer, and Israel today is stronger than ever. This small Israel, small perhaps in territory, but giant in spirit and determination, has become the strongest regional power. Everyone understands that, and in some respects, a world power too. So they tell us there are no achievements. There are tremendous achievements here. This is a historic change. We crush the enemies, we crush the missiles, we crush the regime. We have an alliance like no other, with our great friend, the President of the United States, with the Israel Defense Forces, between the Israel Defense Forces and of course the United States military, relations that have never existed before. Now, these achievements have not yet ended. There is still enriched material in Iran, and President Trump needs to get it out. Either it will be removed by agreement or it will be removed in other ways. But we are working in cooperation, between me and President Trump, between Israel and the United States, like never before. These are achievements that change the entire balance of power, and Israel is a different Israel, stronger than ever. And how did we achieve all of this? Oh, before that, I must say, these achievements, there are those who dismiss them, who diminish them. Of course, first of all is Iran, and Iran's propaganda is echoed in our media channels, and the propaganda of our political rivals is encouraged in Iran's media. But that does not change the truth. There is a huge, tremendous change here, and it comes thanks to our daring pilots, our courageous aircrews, and our ground teams working around the clock, our heroic commanders and soldiers, the fallen who died for us, and the wounded in body and soul for whose recovery we hope.
Hit the like button for me, guys. Thank you so much.
And it comes thanks to you, the citizens of Israel. You have stood firm the entire time. I salute you. And it comes thanks to the brave, determined, and calculated decisions of the government under my leadership. And I want to tell you, the hand is still outstretched. Behold, the people shall rise as a lioness, and lift themselves as a lion. And with God's help, we will continue to work together and we will continue to win.
And that is what BB says. Wow. He said quite a bit there. We're to cut right now over to Vice President J.D. Vance. He stopped by Turning Point USA, and this is either going to really aggravate you or you're going to love it. And that's what I like about my show. We talk about polarizing topics, and I'm so glad you're here. Hit the like button. We appreciate everybody's opinion here.
What's up, man? Mr. Vice President, good to see you. Thank you all. What a welcome. Hello, Athens. Yeah. I think that's their thing. I like it.
That is definitely their thing. So I've been to 2 SEC schools with Turning Point USA, and my Ohio State brethren are ashamed.
And by the way, not only was our administration like the administration that solved the problem, but the president. Excuse me, sir. Right now, you see more humanitarian aid coming into Gaza than it has any time in the past 5 years, because we have taken that situation seriously. And that's one of the things that I'm proud of about our administration, is whether it's there or Thailand and Cambodia, we have consistently tried as much as we can to solve these problems, not just complain about them like the guy who just ran away angry.
You know, JD, I'll never forget your speech at Charlie's memorial, and you talked about how your faith in the wake of Charlie's assassination has become so central to you. You talk about it more, and now you're even writing a book about it.
Sure.
Tell us about it.
Yeah,
what's it called? It's called the Wake.
Well, it's called Communion, and you know, I think the subtitle is Finding My Way Back to Faith.
Yes.
And you know, here's why I wanted to write this book, Andrew, because you know, I think that like a lot of you, there was a point in my life. I mean, you're probably this is probably a much more Christian audience than maybe I was when I was a 22-year-old college student. I just got out of the Marine Corps, and I realized that I was sort of winning this game of life in one sense, and I was losing it in the way that mattered. And, you know, I was raised in a Christian household. I was raised in a very sort of Pentecostal family. You know, our church had really good music.
Were there snakes?
Music and amazing people. And one of the things I love about evangelical culture in the United States of America is just how welcoming it is of everybody, right? And you know that. You're an evangelical Christian.
Hit the like button. Let's get this live stream to 200 likes, guys. We're almost there. I appreciate you. Thank you.
And so the thing is, I hadn't been properly formed in my faith. And so I got to the Marine Corps, and by the time I left the Marine Corps and it was starting college, I called myself an atheist. And I kind of went through this period of being an angry atheist, and then I realized when I got to a point where I thought to myself, what actually matters in life? It's not getting into a law school, which I had done. It's not making a lot of money. It's not credentials. It's not good jobs. It's being a good person. It's, you know, I'd fallen in love with this, thank you. I'd fallen in love with a girl, and that girl eventually became my wife and the mother to our now 4 children. And I remember thinking to myself, like, she doesn't care whether I make a certain amount of money. She wants me to be a good husband. She wants me to be a good father. She wants me to be a virtuous person. And I started to realize
she wants date night.
Yes, she does want that, which is hard when you're vice president of the United States. But what I realized is that the philosophy of secular liberalism, it was achieve. Get as many credentials, make as much money as possible, and that left me feeling empty. And meanwhile, it was this faith that I had discarded as a kid, which actually provided a real sense of meaning and purpose. And then I talked to a priest, and this priest was like, you know what? If you think that the Christian faith is right about all these moral questions, maybe it's right because there's a witness element to it. Like maybe the fact that it's right about morality and about virtue and about sin, maybe that means it's also right about the fact that Jesus Christ was the Son of God. Maybe it's also right that Jesus Christ died and rose from the dead on the 3rd day. Like maybe these things that appeal to you about the Christian faith come from the deeper truth of the Christian faith. And that kind of got me down a pathway of where eventually I was baptized and became a very devout Christian. And at this point, amen. Thank you.
Amen.
But, you know, I thought, first of all, a lot of people have asked me about that journey. And I thought, what better way than to sit down and actually force myself to write it out? I actually started writing the book back in 2017, right after Usha had our first baby, my son Ewan, who's now 8 years old. And so I've been kind of writing it off and on since then. And, a little bit Charlie's death, a little bit just being in the public eye, but mostly just, I've been at this thing for 10 years, and I was like, it's finally time to get it out there. And so I put the finishing touches on it, submitted to the publisher a couple of months ago, and it's coming out in June. So, buy the book, Communion.
I love that. Not that that wasn't also really riveting, but we're getting to the part of the interview that I'm really excited about. You are working on fraud. You're the fraud czar.
Yes.
How many bad guys? Yes, we could. How many bad guys are we going to get? I mean, that's the way there's a really nice framing of this question that I worked on. No. I want to know, what's the progress? Tell us about it.
Well, we've already gotten a lot of bad guys. And this is, one of the things I'm very proud about is that, people don't just want talk, they want action. They want us to actually go and arrest the people who committed fraud, and that's happening. We're starting to do that. Good. And that's a good thing. And a lot more is going to be happening in the future. But actually, who's been amazing on this is Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, who runs the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, because so much of the fraud in our system is people who are defrauding Medicare and Medicaid. Let me just give you a couple of examples. So we have in South Florida, we have entire companies that sell medical devices. They sell prosthetic knees and they sell prosthetic hips. And you know that they've received hundreds of millions, some of them billions of dollars in government funds, and they've never shipped a single product. They're just set up by fraudsters, and there are so many of them, and many of them haven't. There are like over 100 of these companies that haven't shipped a single product. Wow. Okay? I'll give you another example of fraud. So this ridiculous situation with Somali fraudsters in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area. So you have a program that exists to help autistic children get the resources they need, to help their parents, find them a ride to school, or if they need after-school support, to make sure their parents have what they need. And that program has been defrauded by Somali fraudsters who will go in, who will say that we have 3 kids, every single one of them is autistic, there's no verification from the state of Minnesota, so that family will receive tens of thousands of dollars from the taxpayer, and then the autistic children in Minneapolis who actually do need those services, the money's not there anymore because it's been taken away by fraudsters. We've completely stopped the funding to that program, and we basically told the state of Minnesota, you don't get any more of our money unless you verify that you're taking fraud seriously. So we just turned it off. But what Dr. Oz, working with some of the people in our Department of Justice, found is that in Southern California, you had all these people who were engaged in massive fraud against the Medicare system. You had just tons and tons of people getting rich off fraud. And so we had our weekly fraud check-in call 2 weeks ago, and Dr. Oz called in, but he's like, hey, I got to go because I'm about to hop on the bus and we're going to go arrest a bunch of fraudsters in Los Angeles. And I was like, that's exactly what I want you to do. By all means, get off the phone. So we're doing a lot of that stuff. And I think one of the biggest things, and the most important things we're doing on this, Andrew, is that there was sort of in the Biden administration, probably intentionally, but regardless, this attitude of if you were committing fraud of under $1 million, you were committing fraud of under $1.5 million, we're just going to look the other way. Jeez. And the approach that we've taken in the last couple of months is no amount of fraud is too big or too small. If you're defrauding the taxpayer, you ought to go to prison, and anybody who's helping you ought to go to prison too.
That's great. I mean, I think this is one of the absolute slam dunk issues. How many of you guys out in this audience care about American taxpayers getting ripped off? Right? This is like a 90-10, 99-1 issue.
The guy who was shouting at us earlier, he doesn't care at all about people getting ripped off by fraud.
But, I think it underscores a bigger problem, right? Because there's a lot of young people in this room, okay? A lot of you had some very formative years ripped off as well during COVID. You didn't get to do prom. Absolutely. You didn't get graduation. There were so many things taken from you. And, you entered into the college years maybe with a really anemic workforce environment, inflation, historic, life's expensive. What do you tell young people right now that even right now they're wondering, what's the future that I can get? What's the career I can get? Can I afford to have a family, kids, buy a home? What's your message to them right now that have big questions ahead of their future?
I think my message to young people who are wondering whether they can afford a family, whether they can afford a home, whether they can afford, kids and the American dream is
You guys have every right to demand more of your elected leadership, and my job is to make it as possible for the answer to that question to be yes. And fundamentally, the question you should ask your politicians is exactly that. Are you pursuing policies that make it easier for me to afford a house, easier for me to get a good job, easier for me to get a good education, and easier for me to raise my family in safety and security and comfort? That is the fundamental issue. And the thing that bothered me so much about the last administration, you know, there are all these like unique policies that I could sort of point to that were disastrous, and a lot of them were absolutely terrible. But so much of it goes back to housing and immigration and the connection between the two. Under the 4 years that Joe Biden was president, housing literally doubled in value. Meaning if you're a young person trying to buy a house, it costs twice as much as it did before. And you layer on top of that higher interest rates. That's just in 4 years. Nobody can afford that kind of inflation in the housing market. And one of the biggest drivers of it is the fact that we let in tens of millions of illegal aliens. People who shouldn't have been here, who are taking homes that ought by right go to you and your generation. And so what have we done in the Trump administration? We've shut the border. We've kicked a lot of those people who have come into the United States. We've kicked them out of our country. And importantly, we have actually instituted a ban on institutional investors buying up American homes. Because I don't want... I don't want private equity firms, many of them backed by foreign money, to buy American homes. I want you guys to be able to buy American homes. And I will say, and I say this not to brag because I think you guys should be impatient. When a politician comes to you and tells you, I've done all these things, you should be asking, good, now go and do more. That's how I think of my job. I don't wake up and say, oh, we did something really good last week. I think to myself, we did something good last week, now let's go do more of it, or let's go do something different. Because maybe the statistic that I'm proudest of in the entire Trump administration is that over the last 8 months, rents and home prices have come down. Not stayed the same, they have come down. And what I think of as our ultimate ambition is that after another few years of this administration of stopping private equity barons from buying up homes, from kicking out more illegal immigrants, from securing the border, what we're going to see is housing that is much more affordable, and then we're going to keep on building on it year after year after year, because the American dream should not be sold to the highest foreign bidder. It belongs to you.
Yeah. That's so well said, and a lot of the people in this audience will know that this is one of the issues near and dear to Charlie's heart as well, to make sure that you guys could afford the American dream, that we thought about you first as a country, and so thank you for saying it so well. Naturally, we have to ask about what's going on in Iran.
Sure.
So, but I just want everybody, I want to give the Vice President his due here, because you have been to Europe in the last week, then you flew back to the United States, only to fly back across the globe to negotiate in Pakistan, to come back, and somehow we called him, we're like, are you really going to come to Georgia? And he's like, I'll be there. So I want to give him a big round of applause. Thank you. May I just say, that's almost Trumpian level endurance. So, do you know what time zone you are and how many hours of sleep did you get?
I have no idea what the hell time it is right now. And it's kind of good, actually, because you just run on coffee, and then you sleep when you can, you wake up when you have to, and you just drink a whole lot of coffee. And, you know, look, it's the job that I asked for, but yes, I will say, look, I think that, let me just say, U.S. young people, and I want to make some observation, because it made me think of something, which is that young people in the United States, but particularly young Americans in the conservative movement, I think that we have a tendency to get too black-pilled. And here's what I say by this. We have a tendency to get too cynical, too pessimistic. Like, I'm sure that I've said mostly things that you agree with, and I'm sure that I've said some things you may not agree with, and you may not agree with everything that I say about the Iran negotiation, which I will get to answer your question. But here's fundamentally the issue. When you see a politician, or you see a political movement, or you see an administration that isn't doing what you want to do, I think you have two choices. You can say, to hell with those people, and check out of the process. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to get more involved. I'm going to make my voice heard even more. I'm going to pressure that administration to do exactly what I want them to do, because they got my vote, they earned my vote, but they can't take it for granted. And I've seen some of this, on various issues. Like for example, I recognize that a lot of young voters don't love the policy that we have in the Middle East. Okay, I understand that. I also know that we've secured the border. We've lowered housing prices now for 8 months in a row, and there's going to be more to come beyond that. We've made America energy dominant, which has lowered electricity costs and things like that. We've made it so that we have the lowest murder rate in 127 years. I'm not saying you have to agree with me on every issue. I'm not saying you have to agree with me on every issue. What I'm saying is don't get disengaged because you disagree with the administration on one topic. Get more involved. Make your voice heard even more. That's how we ultimately take the country back. It's not by you. If you get 5 things you want and 1 thing you don't want, I see way too many people, especially in sort of the online conservative, Twitter sphere, who say, there's no point. No. Because, or let me give you another example, the SAVE Act, okay? A lot of people want the SAVE Act. I want the SAVE Act. I've been fighting for the SAVE Act literally since day one of the administration. And I've seen a lot of people saying, what the hell's the point of voting for these guys if, you've got 3 Republicans joining with the Democrats to prevent the SAVE Act from passing, or I guess 4 Republicans. And here's my response to that. Yes, it is annoying to me that there are only 45 or 46 Republicans who will fight politically to get the SAVE Act passed. But you know what? 10 years ago, that number was 35. So the answer to frustration is engagement. Don't give up on this process. Get more involved in this process and demand more from people like me. That's how we take our country back. I just think it's important to say that.
That's such a good point. How the Senate is such an example, as frustrating as it is, but you were part of that new wave of new thinking, of new energy, a new generation.
Yes.
And there's so many new voices that are bringing real change to the Senate. I mean, we're 1-2 elections away from maybe having it all the way around.
100%. And I understand people get frustrated at it. I get frustrated at it, but it's a lot better than it was 10 years ago. And frankly, 10 years ago, it was a lot better than it was 10 years before that. But here's where we are on, fundamentally, the president set a policy. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And right now we are negotiating to make sure that very thing happens. And here's, what's interesting about this is, What's interesting about this is that we have this ceasefire that's in place. I think it's 6 or 7 days old. Right now, this ceasefire is holding. And what you're seeing is what the president wants to make, he doesn't want to make like a small deal. He wants to make the grand bargain. And what he's basically offering to Iran is very simple. And frankly, it's something that no president has had the ability to offer. He said that if you're willing to act like a normal country, we are willing to treat you economically like a normal country. He doesn't want a small deal. And that's one of the reasons why, one, I'd say in Pakistan, we made a ton of progress. But the reason why the deal is not yet done is because the president, he really wants a deal where Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon, Iran is not state sponsoring terrorism, but also the people of Iran can thrive and prosper and join the world economy. And that's the trade that he's offering. He's saying, if you guys commit to not having a nuclear weapon, we are going to make Iran thrive. We're going to make it economically prosperous, and we're going to invite the Iranian people into the world economy in a way they haven't been in my entire life. And that's the kind of Trumpian grand bargain that the president has put on the table. Man, we're going to keep on negotiating and try to make it happen because it would be great for the world. It'd be great for our country. It'd be great for everybody. So I'm going to keep on fighting to make it happen.
Yeah. Just a few more, and then we've got a few
please. I know we have some questions from the audience, too.
My one question is, when you looked across from these Iranian negotiators, what did you make of them? Did you get the sense that they really were the right people? I mean, I'm assuming you guys know this type of thing, but...
Yeah, I mean, look, you never know.
Everybody smelled like onions.
The United States had never had meetings at that level with the Iranian government in 49 years. Wow. Like, it's a meeting that had never before happened. Not Democrat, not Republican. We had never had a meeting like that where you have, the person who's effectively running the country in Iran sitting across from the vice president of the United States. That had never happened. And look, honestly, after 49 years, there's a lot of course, mistrust between Iran and the United States of America. You're not going to solve that problem overnight. But yeah, I think the people we were sitting across from wanted to make a deal. And I know the President of the United States told us to go out there and negotiate in good faith. That's what we did. That's what we're going to keep on doing. So you never know, though. Yeah. Right? I mean, I've sat across from United States senators that I thought I agreed with. And, you know, you don't know with those people. Right? I won't say who. You can guess. But I feel very good about where we are.
Great. All right, so this is the last one from me. Now, a lot of people make a big deal about illegal immigration, and we should. It's terrible, right? And this administration has made historic progress on that issue. I think you don't get enough credit for it. And the problem with immigration, illegal immigration, is once it's not a problem anymore, our memories are about 6 days long, and we move on to the next thing.
Guys,
but what about legal immigration?
Sure.
And reforming it, correcting it, addressing abuses, because I look around here and I see a bunch of American students that want jobs, that want homes, that want a space in this country, and I think reforming legal is so critical. Maybe talk about some of the reforms that this administration has done specifically on the legal front.
So this is exactly right. And this is 100%, I think one of the first pieces of legislation I sponsored in the United States Senate was effectively to get rid of the H-1B visa, because I cared so much about this when I was in the Senate. And yes, it is the case that Congress has not exactly come along. There, again, to my point about the United States Senate, there are far more people who are sponsoring that legislation today than there were 10 years ago, but it's not nearly enough to get it through. But just through administrative action, I don't think people realize this, the number of new H-1B visas is down about 90%. In the United States of America. Like that's something that we accomplished purely through administrative action. And again, it's something I cared a lot about. It's something the president cared a lot about. So, there are other things too. There are ways in which, our visa system is taken completely advantage of. One of the biggest loopholes in American immigration, legal immigration policy, and I'll never forget my debate against Tim Walz, where the moderator tried to fact check me because I said this person is an illegal immigrant. It's like, no, actually, they came in as an asylum claimant. And it's like, if you came in on a fraudulent asylum claim, you are an illegal immigrant, whatever the hell somebody from CBS says that you are. And the asylum process was, there were literally millions of people coming into the United States every single year on false asylum claims. We have those claims down something like north of 95%. So there are all of these things that you can do, purely through administrative action. But for us to really make this stick, look, as much as I don't want this to happen, eventually, hopefully 20 years from now, you're going to have a Democratic president who tries to undo everything that we've done on immigration. That's why we need Congress to codify this stuff. But right now, I'm very proud of what we've done in the Trump administration. Massive reductions in fraudulent visas, massive reductions in fraudulent number of asylum claims, massive reduction in H-1B visas granted. We're making a lot of progress. As I said to you, we want to make more. We're certainly going to make more over the remaining 3 years. But what that means, fundamentally, is you guys deserve to have good jobs. And I don't want, when you graduate from this amazing university, and it hurts me to say that as an Ohio State fan, but this is an amazing university. I think the guy who was screaming earlier, he's clearly a Michigan guy. Just put it on the table. Oh no, we have another Michigan guy over here. But
they did win the Natty. So
yes, that's right. But when you guys graduate from this university, I don't want you competing against a low-wage foreigner for your first job. I want a company to have to pay you a fair wage for a fair day's work. It's like common sense. But to do that, you really have to do reform of the H-1B and other, it's not just the H-1B, a number of the other visa systems. We made a lot of progress, but man, I would love a Congress. And you guys advocated. Ask yourself, you have a Senate primary going on right now. This is what I say about getting more involved. Every single one of you should ask those Senate candidates, what do you think about the H-1B visa? Would you co-sponsor the vice president, former senator's legislation to eliminate that program because it's basically just something that big tech companies take advantage of? These are the things that you guys have to do. because I can't keep these politicians honest by myself. I need your help. It's a very big job. Great stuff.
So, thank you, Mr. Vice President. We have some questions. I believe we're ready for some questions.
Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, let's do some questions from the audience.
Vice President J.D. Vance speaking in Georgia at TPUSA.
Oh, right here? Okay, there we are. Hello.
Hi, my name is Hope. I have a serious question and then a fun question.
Okay.
So your serious question is, when you were growing up, who was your voice/influencer that helped you see your conservative views? And then for now, who can we look at as an influencer or like a voice?
Okay, so that's very interesting. So, you know, when I was a kid and I was kind of developing my politics, there was actually a radio host, a guy who founded this organization called Focus on the Family, James Dobson, who was really influential to me. And he was just, you know, he was a good Christian guy. He talked about the family. He talked about things I cared a lot about. And I came from a broken home. So when he talked about the ways in which a broken home had a negative effect on kids, it made sense to me because I was seeing it in my own life. And then here was a guy who was actually talking about it. And what I liked about him is that he didn't talk about it in this judgmental way, right? He wasn't attacking a kid like me who didn't have everything handed to him. He was just explaining in a very real world, with a fundamentally Christian underpinning, here's what happens when things are broken. And, you know, when you ask who are some of the conservative influencers or the political influencers today, there are a few people that I look to who
over 1,000 people in the building. Let's hit that like button, guys. Let's get those likes up.
I think have very, very smart and wise spiritual wisdom. I mean, like I think Andrew and Blake and the podcast that they have at TPUSA is amazing. I listen to it all the time. I think it's great. You know, I think if you want a good laugh, I love Theo Von. Like, he's one of my favorite. I think he's just incredible. And he's got one of these senses of humor where, like, 30% of the time it goes completely over my head, and 70% of the time he's the funniest person imaginable. But I think Theo has a good heart, and that's one of the reasons why I really like listening to his show. And then just in terms of, like, you know, pure politics, of course you should be listening to the Vice President of these United States. Thank you.
And then my fun question is, if you could have a free day with zero responsibilities, what would your day look like?
Oh, that's a good question. And honestly, I would add not just zero responsibilities, but total anonymity. Because the thing that I love this job. It's very cool. I'm very honored to have it. But what I really want to do, honestly, is take Usha and the 3 kids and just walk to a local cafe, eat a ton of pancakes, and then take the kids to the zoo without anybody knowing who the hell I am. That's what I would do if I had a day.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Disguise for him would be pretty easy.
All right, hi JD. My name is Jacob, and I'm also from Cincinnati, so I get you. I'm with you there on the zoo. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
so.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Put a 1 in the chat if you like JD Vance. Put a 2 in the chat if you do not. 1 in the chat if you like JD Vance. 2 in the chat if you do not. And also hit that like button for me. I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Anyway, my question is that there's a lot of division within our country right now, from right to left and everybody in between. And leading up to the 2024 election and Charlie's death, I found that Charlie was definitely the glue that held at least the conservative movement together. Right. And since he has passed, there's been a lot of division within our conservative movement, and especially with the 2026 midterms and the 2028 election coming up. How do you think the conservative movement can be united? And if there is a who do you think that could be?
Well, that's a very good question. And look, man, I agree with you. I think part of the division is Charlie's death, because Charlie, as Andrew knows well, and a lot of this was behind the scenes, Charlie was the guy who was talking to different segments of the movement, right? So, I mean, just this Iran thing. Charlie would be the guy who was talking to the people who really wanted to go to war with Iran and the people who really didn't want to go to war with Iran. And he would try to find ways for those guys to work together, even if they disagreed over one issue, right? And so Charlie's absence is a huge thing. And my answer to your question is, who replaces Charlie Kirk? I think it's going to be a combination of people. I think Andrew's got a role. I've got a role. You guys have got a role. And I think the most important thing to remember about how Charlie thought about this is he always recognized what was the goal and who was the real problem. The real problem is not a person who disagrees with you about this or that foreign policy or domestic policy issue. Okay. The real problem is the person who killed our friend and anybody who defended the people who killed our friend. And we got to keep our eye on the ball and recognize that those who want to kill conservatives because they have the wrong viewpoints, we need to defeat those people. We need to unite with each other and actually fight together to defeat the real enemy that's out there. That's the most important message. And I'll also give you, one of the reasons why I'm optimistic about this is, even when Charlie was alive, you saw some of these divisions starting to bubble to the surface, okay? And I remember, Charlie died in September of 2025. I hadn't been vice president. I'd been vice president for all of 8 months when Charlie lost his life to an assassin's gun. One thing that makes people in politics sort of divide against each other is just being in power, right? When you have control of the House, the Senate, the White House, and there's not an election around the horizon, it's very easy to forget what your goal is. Well, starting in a few months, we're going to have primaries that are over, we're going to have candidates on the ballot, and we're all going to need to get out there and work hard, because the people who want to kill Donald Trump, the people who want to throw Donald Trump in prison, the people who murdered our friend, and then the people who celebrated it afterwards, those people are trying to achieve political power. We cannot let them, and we have to unite to make sure that doesn't happen.
Amen. Thank you, JD.
Good evening, Mr. Vice President. Thank you for taking the time to come out here. My name is Dane Hoff. I'm originally from the great state of Arizona and proudly voted for you and Donald J. Trump in November 2024.
There we go.
And my question is that many people believe the midterms are already gone for us. I disagree. So what is the game plan to win the midterms, and what's the strategy to maintain the coalitions Trump won in 24?
So number one is, I totally agree with you. The idea that midterms are gone is preposterous. And if you go back to 2018 and you look at the polling picture in 2018, that was Trump's first term. And what it showed is that Republicans were getting crushed in the generic ballot by 10, 11, 12 points. The worst polls right now, the worst polls, not all of them, the worst polls have us down by 5 or 6 points, okay? And what happened in 2018 is that as we got closer to the election, and again, the right kind of unified in the face of an election campaign, what happened is those margins narrowed, and the Republican Party did much better than expected in 2018. It wasn't a great election by any means, but the idea that this is done now, it's ridiculous, and frankly, it's cynical, pessimistic garbage pushed by people who want us to completely give up. Don't give up. We got to keep on fighting. That's the fundamental and most important thing, is the people telling you to give up on the midterms are the people who want us to lose the midterms. Don't listen to them. But what's the game plan? You asked what the game plan is. So I'll give you a little good news and a little bad news on that, because the bad news and the good news about the modern Congress is, whether you agree with this or not, the districts are so gerrymandered, there aren't that many battleground congressional districts left. Like, if you go back to 2014, where I think Republicans won like 80 seats in the House, that's not going to happen. Elections like that don't happen anymore. So what we got to fight is 20 or 30 districts where there's actually some real competition in those districts. We got to put a lot of resources. We got to knock on a lot of doors. We got to get out the marginal Trump voter. Because one of the things we saw in 2024 is a lot of our voters, they're dedicated, they love the president, they don't show up in midterm elections. So we got to knock on as many doors and make sure those people get out and vote. We have a game plan, but the House is going to be determined by 20 or 30 seats. We just got to win as many of those as possible. And yes, we can win the midterms in 2026.
Over 1,300 people in the building. Make sure you hit that like button for me, guys. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And we should say what's happening in Virginia, you know?
Exactly. I mean, and then this is the thing. Democrats always overreact. They always overreach. They always do crazy things. And there are districts where, MSNBC will say, well, this district, Donald Trump won it by 20 points, and then, this guy only won it by 12 points. That means everything's terrible. You look in Virginia or look at some of these other places where, Kamala Harris won it by 4 points, and now Republicans are winning by a few points. There's a lot of reason to think that we have a good chance here. We just got to keep on working at it. Sorry, next question.
And the redistricting. Make sure if you're watching in Virginia.
Yes. Yeah, sorry. Virginia, vote against the Obama-Spangenberger redistricting plan.
Yep.
Vote against it. And frankly, the polls are moving in our direction a little bit. We just got to get out there and defeat that ballot measure.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Thank you so much for being here. It's truly incredible that you can come all across the world and then just be in Athens. So my question, not to sound pessimistic, but my question revolves around Congress.
Sure.
And, many Americans feel discouraged, even somewhat dissatisfied. The executive sets out a plan. You want to do something, but Congress sometimes is just unable to deliver. And with, the inability to keep the government open during shutdowns and all of that stuff, what are your thoughts? I know leaders such as Governor DeSantis have called on term limits for Congress members, balanced budget amendments, and banning stock trading. What do you think are just some practical measures that we can take to ensure Congress is delivering results to the American people?
Yeah, so great question. And I remember during the State of the Union address, when the president talked about banning members of Congress from trading stocks, I looked over at Nancy Pelosi and she was sitting in her chair like, and if you watch the State of the Union, I start laughing hysterically. It's because I looked over and saw the look on Nancy Pelosi's face. I think people don't have any idea how bad the corruption is in Washington, D.C. So, yeah, I love the idea of term limits for Congress. You know what I love more? I love the idea of term limits for bureaucrats. Nobody in Washington, D.C. should be able to sit in a chair for 30 years, do your public service, and go back home and do something productive. Look, so much of what's broken about Congress really does go down to corruption. So, there's so many examples, let's say, of a congressman who got a classified briefing on COVID. It's like, oh, there's this crazy Wuhan flu that's floating around Wuhan, China. And again, at that point, like, everybody called it the Wuhan flu. And then you come out of that classified briefing and you buy a bunch of biotech stocks.
Wuhan.
Or you buy a bunch of pharmaceutical stocks. Or maybe, you sell airline stocks because you know that the airlines aren't going to work that well if everybody's sort of sheltering in place and governments are shutting down the economy. That stuff should be illegal and you should go to prison for it. And if you just cut out the basic corruption, you'd solve a lot of the problem.
Everybody do me a favor and hit the like button, and do consider subscribing to the channel.
Thank you so much.
This will be the last question.
Okay. Can we take two more? Because I like answering questions. We'll take a couple more.
Hi, Mr. Vice President. Before I get to my question, I just want to, number one, thank you for your service to the United States military. And number two, welcome you to the greatest university in this country.
Thank you.
My question is, as somebody whose parents adopted 3 children from the foster care system and coming from a broken household yourself, we have seen different sides of a somewhat similar narrative. How would you respond to somebody who says that the only way to succeed in this country is to come from a generationally wealthy family?
That's a good question. Wow, I didn't expect that one.
Good question.
Well, first of all, it's just not true. And I think that one of the things that, a very powerful thing that somebody told me is that, disadvantage and unfairness, it is true. Not everybody started at the exact same place. Some people were dealt a much worse hand than others. But what somebody, again, this person gave me a very good piece of advice and said, no matter what hand you were dealt, you have the responsibility to play it as well as you can. And I think that for me at least, there was something empowering for me about recognizing that, yeah, my life wasn't as easy as most other kids. Like, I wasn't born with money. I wasn't born with parents who had connections, but I still had a responsibility to God. I had a responsibility to myself to play that hand as well as I possibly could. And that
thumbs up or thumbs down. You could hit either one. They're right next to each other.
That was very empowering to me. So I think first the message is, look at the stories. Look at Clarence Thomas. Look at all the people in the United States who have come from very humble beginnings and achieved great things. You can believe, as I do, that we have to do a lot better job by the young people of this country, while at the same time knowing that you are the master of your own destiny. Never give up on yourself and never believe that you're a victim of circumstances, because when you believe that, you will be a victim of circumstances.
Damn skippy.
Thank you so much, and go Dogs.
She's trolling you with that.
I know.
The go
Hi,
dog.
Mr. Vice President. Sorry,
Hello.
My name is Esther. This is so cool. So I know, like, the whole H-1B thing you talked about, but I am also a daughter of a legal immigrant who came here on an H-1B visa.
Sure.
So my mom and my dad, we've been here for over 10 years. I was born here, well, more than over 10 years. I'm 20 years old. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
That's okay. Take your time.
But, like, for people who have been here on H-1B visas, it's been really hard, like, getting the green card based on everything with quotas and everything. Like, my family, we're from India. The quotas are so bad, and they're still open, and they're taking the money. How do we fix the immigration system for people who have been waiting for the green cards for so long? And they're not getting it in time, because a lot of people don't know it, during the Biden administration, to get a green card, it would have taken my family 150 years to get a green card.
Sure.
So how is the Trump administration, like, trying to fix that for people who have been here, are paying taxes and doing a lot of stuff that citizens do, but they can't do a lot of things that citizens do? Like, we're also looking for the American dream. Like, my parents, they send me to private Catholic school, even though sometimes we used to live paycheck to paycheck. So how is the Trump administration going to fix that for, like, people like that?
Sure. So let me just offer a couple observations there. So one, I appreciate the question, and two, what I would say is, you heard me talk about H-1B fraud, because I think there is a lot of fraud in the H-1B system, and I think you can believe on the one hand that there's a lot of fraud in the H-1B system, while also believing that there are people who have come to the United States in the past who have enriched this country. And look, I'm married to the daughter of immigrants from India, and I love my in-laws, and they're great people, and they've been great contributors to the United States of America. But I also think that when you become an American citizen, whether your family has 9 generations of lineage in the United States, or whether your family has 0 generations of lineage in the United States, one of the responsibilities that we must expect of citizens, and of course, it's always hard to talk in specifics about your situation because I don't know about it, but one of the obligations of citizens is that you have to think about the best interest of the country, and not the country you came from beforehand, and not of any sort of any group that you came from. You've got to think of yourself as an American. The system only works if everybody thinks of themselves as an American. I remember having this conversation with my father-in-law, who's an amazing guy, and and it was actually during a Senate event that I had done, where I had somebody who came up to me, and I'm sure a great person, like a wonderful person. It was a Ukrainian American in Cleveland, Ohio. I was campaigning for the Senate. There are a lot of Ukrainian Americans in Cleveland, Ohio. And this person got really agitated at me because I was saying we should stop funding the Ukraine war, okay? And I still believe that, obviously, and it's one of the things I'm proudest that we've done in his administration, is we've told Europe that if you want to buy weapons, you can, but the United States is not buying weapons and sending them to Ukraine anymore. We're just out of that business. It's a very good thing. But these Ukrainian American, again, a kind person, they probably didn't vote for me after this conversation, but he was kind of sticking his finger in my face saying, you need to support my country. You need to support my country. And I said, sir, with all due respect, if you're an American, your country is the United States of America, not a place that you immigrated from, whenever that was. And it occurred to me, and I know this is the last question, I'll try to be quick here, but it occurred to me that my father-in-law, who came from India, who moved to the United States, who got an education and became an American citizen, that never once in my life has he ever said, you have to do this, or you should do this because it's in the best interest of the country that I came from. And I think that attitude, to the extent that attitude dominates among the new generation of Americans, that makes Americans feel welcoming towards people, because everybody, again, whether your family's been here for 300 years or 1 second, to be an American means to look out for Americans first, and that's the perspective we have to take to our immigration policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. We'll do one more. Sorry, real quick. I love this, but I got to go.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President, and coming to UGA and allowing us to express our freedom of speech. So thank you so much. The First Lady said Epstein was not acting alone and had to be held accountable. She said and called for a congressional hearing, but President Trump multiple times called the files a hoax. The acting attorney general said Epstein shouldn't be a part of anything at the DOJ. If there are compromised government officials in those files, how can the public trust that this administration will hold anyone accountable when its own Justice Department is actively blocking the investigation? Given that, can you clearly articulate your stance on whether federal entities should have a formal investigation? Thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, you said the Associate Attorney General or something. I haven't seen that quote, but here's my view on the Epstein matter. Number one, the guy was clearly a scumbag. Okay. Number two, he clearly had extraordinary connections, both with intelligence services, both inside the United States and outside the United States, and also with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people. Okay. Number three, I have been a firm advocate and will continue to be a firm advocate of where we have something, and you know, like, I'm probably more obsessed with this than most officials, okay? Probably more obsessed with this than most people even in this room, is when you see somebody who says something in an email that suggests, you know, there's one email I read, and it's been a little while ago, but it was talking about, you know, one person sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein saying, oh, there was some really nice, like, pizzas and grape sodas or something like that. And I remember it sounded like the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, but here it was in like an email from a guy. And my reaction to that was, we should absolutely investigate that person. Okay. And, you know, you remind me, I'm going to follow up on that to see whether we've investigated that person, because we should. We absolutely should. When you see evidence of sexual assault, sexual misconduct, regardless of whether you're powerful or not, in fact, you should probably investigate it more if you're a powerful person, right? I don't want powerful people, you know, being involved in this disgusting behavior. But I have to defend the president on this, because when he said that it was a hoax, what he was talking about was this democratic idea that he's connected to Epstein. If you look at those emails, it's like, you know, they were in the same, you know, everybody in Palm Beach knew everybody, okay? Like, the president has said he knew Jeffrey Epstein and he was a scumbag. But what you see in those emails is that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald Trump, and Donald Trump hated Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, one of the emails is about Donald Trump narking on Jeffrey Epstein to the local sheriff, saying, this guy's a scumbag. You should go and pick him up. So when Donald Trump says, when the president says this is a hoax, he's not saying it's a hoax that Epstein was the scumbag. He's not saying that it's a hoax that Epstein was connected to powerful people. He's saying this democratic idea that somehow he was Epstein's best friend, that is a hoax. And if you look at the emails, it's obvious that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald J. Trump. And by the way, one of the best signs for whether you're a good person or not, for whether you're a decent human being, is if the worst people in the world hate your guts. The fact that Jeffrey Epstein hates Donald J. Trump is a pretty good thing for Donald J. Trump.
Okay. Yeah, well, and I will say, by the way, just so you know, the DOJ, just before we got on stage, I guess I saw the news, has unredacted fully the 6 million documents, made it available to your congressmen and women. So put pressure on them to go give you a report of what they find. Mr.
Awesome.
Vice President, thank you so much.
Man. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Vance. We are going to cut right to the White House. The First Lady, Melania Trump, came out the other day to the press and said this.
Good afternoon. The lies linking me with the disgraceful Jeffrey Epstein need to end today. The individuals lying about me devoid of ethical standards, humility, and respect. I do not object to their ignorance, but rather I reject their mean-spirited attempts to defame my reputation. I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell. My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note.
Trivia.
I am not Epstein's victim. Epstein did not introduce me to Donald Trump. I met my husband by chance at a New York City party in 1998. This initial encounter with my husband is documented in detail in my book, Melania. The first time I crossed paths with Epstein was in the year 2000 at an event Donald and I attended together. At the time, I had never met Epstein and had no knowledge of his criminal undertakings. Numerous fake images and statements about Epstein and me have been circulating on social media for years now. Be cautious about what you believe. These images and stories are completely false. I'm not a witness or a named witness in connection with any of Epstein's crimes. My name has never appeared in court documents, depositions, victim statements, or FBI interviews surrounding the Epstein matter. I have never had any knowledge of Epstein's abuse of his victims. I was never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant, was never on Epstein's plane, and never visited his private island. I have never been legally accused or convinced of a crime in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking, abuse of minors, and other repulsive behavior. The false smears about me from mean-spirited and politically motivated individuals and entities looking to cause damage to my good name, to gain financially and climb politically, must stop. My attorneys and I have fought these unfounded and baseless lies with success and will continue to maintain my sound reputation without hesitation. To date, several individuals and companies have been legally obligated to publicly apologize and retract their lies about me,
like who?
Such as Daily Beast, James Carville, and HarperCollins, UK. Now is the time for Congress to act. Epstein was not alone. Several prominent male executives resigned from their powerful positions after this matter became widely politicized. Of course, this doesn't amount to guilt, but we still must work openly and transparently to uncover the truth. I call on Congress to provide the women who have been victimized by Epstein with a public hearing specifically centered around the survivors. Give these victims their opportunity to testify under oath in front of Congress with the power of sworn testimony. Each and every woman should have her day to tell her story in public if she wishes, and then her testimony should be permanently entered into the congressional record. Then, and only then, we will have the truth. Thank you.
Drop the mic and walk off the stage. Wow. Whew. So Trump is out there saying the Iran war is very close to over. A deal is coming. Hegseth is staring down, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of War, staring down the barrel of an impeachment, and Netanyahu doubling down. I want to thank everybody for coming out and joining me today. I want to thank the mods. I want to thank everybody who gave gifts, super chats, gifted memberships. You guys are fantastic. Make sure you leave a comment in the comments section. Let's continue the conversation there. I appreciate you all coming out, and there are 1,700 people in the building, but I got to go. I'll see you on the next one. The truth is a moving target, and I thank you so much for joining me. Take care of each other.